Tonight, just days from finding the truth. After decades of stigma, trauma and loss, victims of the infected blood scandal await the final report from the UK inquiry.
This is going to be an earthquake for the government when this report comes out next Monday.
Also making the headlines, a man's facing a life sentence for the murder of a retired teacher from the exclusive Fettes College. His co-accused is found guilty of covering up the crime by helping dispose of the body.
2 asylum seekers are detained in Glasgow for possible deportation. The Scottish Government has demanded enforcement action is halted.
And as the curtain falls on the Premiership campaign, Celtic prepare to lift the trophy for a 3rd season in a row. I'm Vanessa Kennedy in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. It's been described as the biggest treatment disaster in NHS history. And finally, after decades of campaigning, victims of the infected blood scandal hope they are just days away from finding out the truth. On Monday, the final report from a UK-wide inquiry is to publish, establishing where responsibility lies and the extent of any cover-ups.
In advance of the findings, the head of Scotland's blood transfusion service has apologised to the thousands affected by contaminated NHS blood products. Our chief reporter Sharon Frew has been speaking to survivors who've endured years of stigma, trauma and loss.
This is going to be an earthquake for the government when this report comes out next Monday. I've waited 25 years for this.
People still have this assumption that if you have these viruses that you in some way have a degree of responsibility for the fact that you're infected. I was 3. Some of the boys were 3 months old. This wasn't our fault.
The doctor kept saying, but the blood is 100% safe. And we now know that at that time, everybody knew it wasn't.
In the 1970s and 80s, an estimated 3,000 people in Scotland were given blood infected with HIV and hepatitis C. Many were exposed through transfusions. Others, including Bruce Norval, received NHS treatment for haemophilia. Yeah. Bruce believes he was given contaminated products in 1968, but it was years before he received a hepatitis diagnosis.
A few weeks after my 18th birthday, the newspapers announced all haemophiliacs have AIDS. And my life changed forever. You were made to feel stupid for worrying about it. My liver results by that point, when they finally owned up to it, were spectacularly bad. One doctor referred to them as being equivalent to drinking a bottle of vodka a day. Once you've lost so many friends, you end up finding you're fighting for them.
Ahead of Monday's publication, the Scottish National Blood Transfusion Service accepts mistakes were made.
We've obviously looked at the evidence presented in the inquiry, and our view is that there are things that SNBTS could and should have done better in the past, and we take responsibility for that. We want to apologise to people for that.
Apologies have been made before following Scotland's Penrose inquiry. Bill Wright says the day of its publication was difficult.
When we read this, we were raging too, OK?
A 6-year investigation produced just one recommendation. It was branded a whitewash. 38 years ago, Bill was told he had hepatitis C from infected blood products given following a leg injury. In March, he was diagnosed with liver cancer. He can't travel to London with others who have led this campaign, as he's now on the transplant list.
Monday is certainly about truth. And that's, we've never really had the truth. The sort of UK-wide media narrative has been that it was all about American blood products. It wasn't. I was infected via a blood product which was derived from 1,000 or thousands of Scottish blood donors. Following on from truth, hopefully, will be justice. Part of that justice most certainly is financial compensation.
Jill Fife has severe sensitivity to light following experimental treatment for hepatitis C. The consequences of this and of the transfusion given to her in 1988 following complications after childbirth continue to this day.
Before the transfusion, when I looked to the future, it went on forever. After the transfusion, it went that far, and it's never really gone back. At Sir Brian's hearing, their phrase was, "What happened should not have happened," and you just felt like I'm not the mad woman anymore. It's like everybody's acknowledged what's happened. Because my children weren't infected, I could cope with anything really, and a lot of people have had to cope with children being ill. I wouldn't be able to cope with that.
Jill says for years she felt that there was a wall of silence. On Monday, she and others hope it will finally be torn down. Sharon Frew, STV News.
A man who murdered a retired teacher from the exclusive Fettes College in what police have described as a horrendous crime is tonight facing a life sentence. A judge today told 29-year-old Paul McNaughton he'll face a significant time behind bars for killing pensioner Peter Cushan in Edinburgh.
His co-accused, Paul Black, was cleared of murder but found guilty of covering up the crime by helping dump the body more than 100 miles away. Our senior reporter Gordon Cree was in court.
Dr. Peter Cushan spent decades working at Fettes, where he was described as an inspirational biology teacher. But in August 2022, he was lured to a flat in Edinburgh's Seafield Road, thinking he was going to meet a man from the hookup app Gaydar. When he got there, he was murdered, something this man, Paul McNaughton, admitted at a court hearing last year. McNaughton had previously met Dr. Cushan for sex and had stolen large sums of money from him. McNaughton's flatmate, 65-year-old Paul Black, pictured here some time ago, was today cleared of involvement in the killing, but found guilty of attempting to defeat the ends of justice. Well, we've just had a statement issued on behalf of Dr. Cushan's family. It says, "We remain horrified that anybody could have treated a vulnerable 75-year-old in such a despicable manner. Our life will never be the same, and we will always ask the question, what if?" It says there is, of course, no answer to what if, as events have overtaken us and there is no going back in time. However, we have happy memories of Peter and can reflect on the positive impact he had on so many people's lives. After Peter Cushan was killed, the pair left his body under a bed for several days, enjoying a trip to the fun fair at Burnt Island. McNaughton made multiple withdrawals from Dr. Cushan's bank accounts before the remains were driven to Northumberland, where both men were involved in hiding them near a lay-by. Police have described the murder as horrendous and said McNaughton's despicable actions showed no regard for Peter Cushan's life or for the suffering and anguish he caused his relatives and friends.
He had this air of great dignity, like a man, you know, who knew who he was and who was in control of everything, and the last person to be attacked and to be so vulnerable.
Black can expect to be jailed for several years when he's sentenced on the 17th of June. McNaughton will find out the punishment part of his life sentence on the same day. Gordon Cree, STV News at the High Court in Edinburgh.
The Scottish Government has demanded that the Home Office stops immigration enforcement action against asylum seekers in Scotland after 2 men in Glasgow were detained for possible deportation to Rwanda.
It's the first time asylum seekers in Scotland are known to have been targeted under the controversial policy. Well, our Westminster correspondent Paris Gutianis joins us now. Paris, what can you tell us about them?
Well, Vanessa, a short while ago I spoke to Anne McLaughlin, the MP for Glasgow North East, about one of the men, an asylum seeker who arrived in the UK aged 18 or 19 and is now 21. His lawyers aren't saying where he's from for his safety. The man went to his regular immigration reporting meeting in Glasgow, but was told he was being detained for removal from the UK. His phone was taken away and he was put straight in a van for the 10-hour journey to England, he says, without food or water. It's a story we're hearing more and more often as the Home Office adapts its tactics to avoid scenes like the ones at Kenmure Street in Glasgow in 2021, when an immigration raid sparked a sit-in protest that forced the men who were the target of the raid to be released. Immigration powers are reserved to Westminster, so the Scottish Social Justice Secretary, Shirley-Ann Somerville, has done the only thing that she can, send a strongly worded complaint.
We knew the Home Office was planning this type of action throughout the UK, but to know that it's actually happening here in Scotland, despite the fact that not just the Scottish Government is against this, but actually I believe the Scottish people don't want to see these types of detentions to try and send people off to Rwanda. It's a barbaric policy, and it also doesn't work as a deterrent either.
Now, the Home Office hasn't responded to the Scottish Government or to my request for comment. In the past few weeks, the department has posted videos to social media showing raids to detain asylum seekers who it says will be the first to be deported to Rwanda when flights take off in July. In fact, this week the scheme was widened so that anyone whose asylum claim is rejected and can't be sent back to their home country could be sent to Rwanda, not just those who have crossed the channel in small boats. That means many more asylum seekers in Scotland may find themselves subject to this sort of action.
OK, Paris at Westminster, thanks for that.
A lawyer who was found to have crossed the line when questioning a rape survivor has been fined and ordered to pay her compensation. Ellie Wilson submitted a complaint over the cross-examination of advocate Lorenzo Alonzi defending her rapist Daniel McFarlane during a trial at the High Court in Glasgow in 2022. The 26-year-old was raped by McFarlane between 2017 and 2018 while they were both students at Glasgow University. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison.
I'm really glad that this has come to an end now and that I can sort of begin to move on with my life. I do think that the penalty wasn't harsh enough if you compare the fees that he has to pay compared to the amount that he would receive for taking cases such as mine. I really don't think it's sufficient. I do think, however, that it's good that there's a material consequence, and I hope that this will send a strong message.
Now, with 4 weeks to go until Scotland kick off Euro 2024 against host Germany, fans are being urged to be wary of more than just the strength of Bavarian beer. Staff at the Foreign Office's Consular Contact Centre in East Kilbride are expecting an influx of calls and are encouraging fans to check the travel advice.
It comes as fear of terrorism at the tournament were heightened this week after a group linked to Islamic State named 3 German cities as targets. Laura Alderman reports.
With Euro 2024 within touching distance, the Tartan Army is on the ball, planning to take planes, trains and automobiles to get to Germany. But some fans will be wheeling their way there. Callum and a group of friends are cycling from Edinburgh to Cologne, where they'll donate their bikes to asylum seekers and refugees.
Both of my jobs are sort of centred around helping people, especially refugees and asylum seekers, possibly the most marginalised people in our society. So we're raising funds and awareness for Bikes for Refugees, this charity, and Big Hearts. If anyone's got any spare tickets for Scotland games, give us a shout. We'd happily mop them up.
With just 4 weeks to go until Scotland kick off the tournament against hosts Germany, anything up to 200,000 Scots are expected to attend. But depending on how Steve Clarke's men fare, many more could join the party, and those numbers would increase.
You are through to British Consular Services. How can I help?
And for any fans who get into difficulty, help is on hand. Staff at the Foreign Office's Consular Contact Centre in East Kilbride are undergoing additional training in preparation for an influx of calls.
I would check your passport before you go. Make sure that you have sufficient validity on your passport to allow you entry into Germany and for the whole tournament. I think the other thing I would say is on the travel advice. It's great to read the travel advice, but also make sure that you sign up for the alerts. We have a special travel advice for the Euros, so Euros 2024 travel advice is available. It's on our gov.uk website.
For fans on the ground, the message is to enjoy yourself, but safely.
Hopefully it'll all go without a hitch and it'll be great.
You're going to watch a few of the games yourself?
I'd like to think that the big boss might let us put a couple on the telly. Maybe even the early games where Scotland are involved, or maybe even all the games of Scotland are involved. Absolutely. It might be the videos in the final, you never know.
And if that does happen, well, most of Scotland could be on the march to Germany. Laura Alderman, STV News.
Other stories in the West, and more than 50 pubs and bars in Glasgow city centre can open for an extra hour under a pilot project. The city's licensing board has granted permission for 54 premises to open until 1 a.m. The change comes into force immediately. A man is in a serious condition in hospital after he was stabbed while walking in a field. The 30-year-old was near Murroch Avenue in Dumbarton when someone assaulted him yesterday morning. Officers say they are working to minimise disruption at an anticipated large gathering of Celtic supporters in Glasgow city centre tomorrow. Celtic will lift the Premiership trophy after the match against St Mirren. For decades, they were cruelly labelled fallen women. Tonight, the real-life stories of unmarried mothers affected by forced adoption practices will be retold on the stage. A musical play, which premieres in Glasgow this evening, was created in the months following a formal Scottish Government apology for the historic wrong. Joanne Bonner has been speaking to the cast, preparing for tonight's opening night.
She's coming home with me! She's coming home with me!
The Fallen is based on true events. To prepare, its cast met with some of the Scottish women whose lives were changed forever by forced adoption practices.
I think they're incredible women, and I think that we could all learn something from them in terms of their resilience. I spoke to one of the mothers quite recently to tell her just how nervous we're all feeling, and they said to me not to worry because what we're doing is trying to raise that awareness. But we do feel a responsibility to get this right. We're painting an entire picture of someone's life.
We are sorry. Last year, the former First Minister issued a formal apology to those affected by forced adoption. The group that helped to campaign for that recognition know this weekend's performances will be poignant.
You can't blame me for that. Don't be carrying the baby. I mean, carrying the blame.
It's felt really quite healing to know that there are young people who are willing to listen to the story and to respond to it in the way that they are, because we all feel sort of over many years very sad and very upset about this, but have never been able to speak that truth. And the fact that there's such an age gap between the people who are performing and the people that experienced it, it's just lovely to know that there can be that engagement and that empathy.
And I'll miss your first smile, your first word, your first step.
During the final section of the play, the first names of babies who were taken will be read out.
This was something that we wanted to acknowledge, was those identities. A very poignant moment, quite a challenging moment actually to perform, and I've always said to them, this is probably the most important bit of this whole piece actually, is that moment of saying these names.
The show is a sellout, and its writers say they've been overwhelmed by the level of international interest. They're now looking at ways for this play to reach a wider audience. Joanne Bonner, STV News at the Webster Theatre in Glasgow.
So the bitter cold, the heavy rains all gone, Raman. Bitter cold, heavy rains all gone. So that must mean the Scottish Premiership season's over.
That's right. Tomorrow, John, or this weekend rather, it ends. Still all to play for in terms of the relegation playoff spot. European spots have been secured. We know that Celtic have been champions, and we've been speaking to Brendan Rodgers today. Good evening. Brendan Rodgers says he's very satisfied to have proven his doubters wrong after guiding Celtic to the third Premiership title in a row. The champions will get their hands on the trophy when they host St Mirren tomorrow. Meanwhile, Philippe Clement says Rangers are reaching the end of a cycle as he prepares to make big changes in the summer. Here's Ronnie Charters.
The celebrations from Wednesday night roll on to tomorrow for Celtic after Brendan Rodgers claimed his 8th trophy at the club. This season has been unlike any other though for the Northern Irishman, having faced numerous questions and criticism during the campaign. But after the 5-0 win at Kelly secured another league title, Rodgers admits he's delighted he's silenced his critics.
I'm not made of wood. You know, we all have feelings, and you know, I can trace back to August, whenever the headlines were around, I'm, you know, under massive pressure, and this was on the 26th of August. So, and that has continued right the way through. It certainly wasn't that I'd lost the hunger or was going through the motions or hadn't the stomach for the fight, is what some people said, and that's clearly people who don't know me. So it's been very satisfying.
Over at Rangers, as they face a trip to Hearts on the final day, Philippe Clement is already planning for next season. With several players out of contract, the Belgian is expecting a summer of change at Ibrox, both on and off the pitch.
I had really good talks with the board about that, what my ideas are in the club, what to change towards recruitment, towards positions, all those things. And let's say that we are about almost everything aligned. That's already a big thing. In a lot of clubs it's sometimes more difficult. I think we're, as a club, at in some ways at the end of a cycle. So we need to change some things.
Ronnie Charters, STV News.
Hearts say they have shown a sign of intent for next season after Benny Beningame signed a new contract. The midfielder was reaching the end of his previous deal, but has now committed himself to Tynecastle until the summer of 2026. Meanwhile, Craig Gordon says he's anxiously waiting to learn if he'll be named in Steve Clarke's squad for this summer's Euros. Clarke is expected to reveal his 26-man squad next week.
It would still be one of the highlights of my career to be part of a Scotland squad to go to Euros. So yeah, I am nervous. I don't know what's going to happen, but I certainly feel as if I've put the work in training. I feel ready, and if I do get that call, then I'll go there in a good state and ready to do my job.
David Gray says he 100% believes he is ready to become the permanent Hibs boss. The 36-year-old is in his fourth spell as interim head coach following the sacking of Nick Montgomery. And ahead of their final match away to Livingston, Gray is confident he could take on the role on a full-time basis.
I've been in this position now 4 times. It's been uncomfortable for a number of reasons because, as I say, it's first and foremost, there's people losing their jobs when you work with them all the time. But in terms of backing my ability to be able to do the job, I 100% believe I can do it. I think I've demonstrated that now on a few occasions. But always, first and foremost, I'm doing whatever at this moment in time what the club have asked me to do.
There are all of the final games in this season's Premiership. Kilmarnock will end a very good campaign away to Dundee, 9th place Motherwell are at home to St Johnstone, and Ross County face Aberdeen. Now, ahead of tonight's Premiership playoff semi-final second leg between Partick Thistle and Raith Rovers, Rovers manager Ian Murray says he wants a fast start to try and finish off the tie. His team lead 2-1 from the first leg. But Partick Thistle boss Chris Doolan believes all the pressure is on tonight's opponents. Jamie Borthwick is at Starks Park.
Yes, one game to claim a place in the Premiership playoff final, and Raith Rovers hold that slender 2-1 lead from Tuesday's first leg at Firhill. Partick Thistle, of course, know all about the pressure of these games, having come so close to winning promotion last season. For Rovers, they've had a fantastic season, finishing second in the Championship, and tonight is all about keeping the dream alive of making a return to the top flight.
Our games against Partick Thistle this season have always been really close encounters. Within them we've managed to come out on top a few times, but you know, it's probably the first time in a while where Raith have fought an opportunity to go into the final. You know, we're one game away from it, so we'll go out on Friday evening and try and finish the tie off. We'll try and play exactly how we did in the first half of the first leg, because I think if we get to that level again, then we're very hard to beat.
I think it's just common sense that they will be favourites to win the game, but being the favourite brings pressure. We know if we get half a chance, there's a good chance we can take it. But coming up to Raith Rovers, they will be the favourites. It'll be a noisy atmosphere, but like I said, we'll bring that big back in that we always do, and we'll try and turn it into a home game as well.
Yes, these two teams so evenly matched throughout the course of the season. It could be another really close encounter here at Starks Park this evening. And thousands of fans will be making the journey to Starks Park, creating a huge atmosphere for this one. Will it be Raith Rovers or will it be Partick Thistle who make it into the Premiership playoff final?
And that, folks, is all your sport tonight. Have a great weekend. See you next week.
Thanks, Rahman. Now, Sean has the weather forecast.
A
spell of wows will gradually settle into a scattering of traditional tapas. TUI sponsors STV Weather.
Good evening. A glorious day for many of us. Lovely blue skies around, although we've seen some heavy showers developing across South and East Ayrshire and also across northern parts of Argyll and the West Highlands. Those fading in the next couple of hours, but still the risk of a few heavy ones before they do fade away a little bit later on. But tonight, dry, clear spells for many of us. A lot of high and low cloud coming into the east coast, and that will actually work its way well into western parts through the central belt, so coming all the way through to lights of Glasgow and Renfrewshire. So a little bit of a misty, murky start to the day here tomorrow. Most of us, it is a sunny start. We see that low cloud burning away from central areas, and again, like today, we will see a few heavy showers getting sparked off. I think once again, it's probably around the lights of East Ayrshire into Dumfries and Galway, lights of Dunmellington, perhaps catching a few heavy showers during tomorrow, and also a very small risk around the lights of Glasgow, Renfrewshire, Dumbartonshire of a few heavy showers developing, and also across Stirlingshire towards the lights of Perthshire. Around the likes of Loch Tay, Loch Katrine and Loch Tummel here, I think we've probably got the highest chance of some heavy showers. But despite the risk of a few showers developing, it is going to feel very warm out there tomorrow, especially around Renfrewshire and Glasgow. Temperatures about 24, 23 degrees Celsius there, Johnston, Paisley, Bridge of Weir. So feeling very nice in that sunshine. Of course, remember at this time of year the UV levels are very high. Just watch out for the risk of those showers tomorrow. Mostly dry on Sunday. Temperatures not quite as high. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors STV Weather.
That's it from us. Thank you for everyone who missed out on the sunshine to watch us this evening.
And from all of us here, enjoy the rest of your sunny evening. Good night.
Good night.